And welcome to Whiskey Politics. Dave Sussman here at America's Voice News. You can also find us on YouTube, on Facebook, and everywhere else. And it is a pleasure to be here. Crazy week, as always. I want to get into a couple of great subjects today. I got a couple of great guests coming up right here in just a moment. Is Brandon Straka, the founder of the WalkAway movement. And also, we've got Steve Hayward from Powerline.com coming up here at the bottom of the hour. But first, let's discuss a little bit about some identity politics. I just looked up the definition of identity politics in the dictionary, and it says politics in which groups of people having a particular racial, religious, ethnic, social, or cultural identity tend to promote their own specific interests or concerns without regard to the interest or concerns of any larger political group. Next to it is a picture of the Democrat Party. It's pretty much how they are running politics today. It's all about identity. It's all about race, gender, sexuality, and everything else. And there's been a big pushback, including at the tip of the spear with our next guest is Brandon Straka, who's coming back to Whiskey Politics. You all know Brandon, WalkAway campaign founder. He is on a self-quoted mission to red pill humanity. He's got hundreds of thousands of followers on just Twitter and Facebook alone. Welcome back, Brandon. How are you, buddy?
Hey, Dave. I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing really well. So first of all, I wanted to get your impression on what we just saw earlier this week over at the Golden Globes with Ricky Gervais. This was incredible. Now, you and I both know that Ricky is no liberal, but he really took Hollywood to town. And you tweeted here, you said, loved Ricky Gervais' speech at the Golden Globes 2020. I truly believe an anti-left backlash has begun. Thank you, Ricky, for telling Hollywood the truth about themselves. Only wish you'd had about 2 more hours. You saw those faces in the room, Brandon. What did you think when you first heard this?
Well, so if I recall correctly, I think I was traveling when it was happening, and a lot of people, I started getting these messages in my, when you're on an airplane, you can't really watch videos, but you can check like updates and things on Twitter. And I was getting all of these messages in my direct messages from people saying like, what do you think of what Ricky Gervais said? What do you think? And I was going, what did he say? So when I finally landed, I was able to watch the video, and I thought it was great. I mean, but the point is, I guess by that point, it was so built up in my mind that I thought he basically went in there and just annihilated everyone. But I thought it was really, really good. And I don't think we've ever seen anything quite like it, but at an awards show, that is. But I mean what I say in that part of me felt something when I was watching this, that I think the door has been opened at this point, not just by Ricky Gervais and not just by a lot of what we see going on in the political realm or in the social media realm, but I think that there is this backlash that is happening now, or it's begun, where I don't think that people who are on the political left anymore should feel quite as comfortable, that no one is going to push back on them anymore if they espouse these ridiculous views and these, as you were saying, the political correctness and the identity politics. I think we're reaching this point now where people should feel a little less comfortable that they can just say whatever they want and that no one is going to push back on them now, because people are getting sick and tired of it.
When Ricky told basically everybody, he gave him directions. He says, nobody wants to hear about your politics or your opinion on culture. You're an actor. Just come up, accept your little award, and F off. You saw the faces in that crowd. Most of them are never spoken to like this. They all have high-level agents, and everybody bows and worships at their feet. Let me ask you this. Do you think that actually resonated with that room?
Yes. I do. I mean, I think that because I think that deep down, a good number of them know that they're full of crap. And I think that the other half may suspect that they're full of crap, but they don't really know for sure. But he, I think, pulled the mask off in a way and really shined a light. There was a lot of revelation, I think, that happened in that moment. I mean, he even made comments such as, if ISIS put out a streaming platform, all of you would call your agents tomorrow. And he said something else about Epstein. He said, look, Epstein, he's your friend. He's your friend. And they all just kind of looked around like, oh, and it's so true. I mean, he was the part I think I loved the most was he made some comment along the lines of, you're in no position to stand in judgment of anyone. You people are in absolutely no position to judge anybody. I just thought it was great. And yeah, I think that a lot of those people got their bottom side handed to them. And I think that you're right. They're not used to being talked to that way, but they better get used to being talked to that way, because I hope that this is the new normal.
You're out there, you're talking to a lot of people, you speak across the country, you're on television quite a lot. Hollywood doesn't seem to understand that when they put something in a movie that is woke, okay, the box office receipts are showing. We just saw with Charlie's Angels, and earlier this year or last year we saw with what was it, Captain Marvel, this whole wokeness thing. Those movies are failing, yet they still continue to produce these things. What is it that you think is the disconnect between Hollywood and the rest of the world?
I think that Hollywood feels that it is their duty and obligation to teach lessons to the rest of knuckle-dragging society, as they see, I think, anybody who doesn't belong to their political ideology. I think that they've lost sight of the fact that it's their job to entertain people, and not that it's their job to be the arbiters of morality. And unfortunately, what I think is the biggest disconnect is that they don't even yet understand why the middle of the country feels the way that they feel, or does the things that they do. They don't understand why anyone supported the president. I mean, in their minds, it's that, there's the liberal elites, and then there's everyone else in society who are, racist and bigots and homophobes and everything else, and that it's their job and their moral duty to teach the rest of us about non-Caucasian people, and to teach the rest of us about gender spectrums, and to teach the rest of us about, all of these insane things that, by the way, we already know what they're doing anyway. And I have to admit, I'm a little bit of a hypocrite here, because I am a former liberal, and I used to be one of these people who thought those things about the people from the rest of the country. But I've come to realize that, first of all, I think that the people of middle America are actually a lot smarter than the people of Hollywood, or the liberal elites in general, but also that they know what's going on when they turn on their television sets, or they watch the movies, and they see, the subtleties, the less than subtleties, I guess I would say, of, the white characters are now the bumbling idiots, who depend on the people of color to come in and save the day, and everyone's a lesbian, and everyone's gay, and everyone's gender non-binary.
Right.
Tired of being preached to. These are, the subtext has become the main context, and it's ruined entertainment entirely.
Yeah, Brandon, one of the biggest issues that they have is obviously who, as you just referred to, the deplorables voted for, and the big orange bad man in the Oval Office. You have, again, you voted for Hillary Clinton. Most of our viewers know that now. You came around right after the 2016 election, and you put out this incredible movement video, WalkAway, that started and flourished and grew like topseed across the country. And again, you have hundreds of thousands of followers. And in fact, I'm going to play a little clip here of you speaking at the Trump rally back in August to 18,000 people. Here's a quick clip.
I am no longer afraid of the Republican Party, and I'm calling on all of those in minority classes in this country to turn off the fake news and stop being afraid as well. To my LGBT brothers and sisters, I'm asking you to do what may be the hardest thing you'll ever be asked to do. Let go of the past, forgive, and learn to have faith in your fellow man again.
So, Brandon, this is incredible, because when you're talking about, again, coming from relative obscurity at the end of the 2016 election, and here you are opening in front of 18,000 people for the President of the United States. I know you and I have spoken since this point, but talk to me about, first of all, what did that feel like for you? And secondly, what has been the response from friends, family, and strangers since?
Well, so getting to speak at the Trump rally, I think it was absolutely incredible, and it was not only was it incredible to just have such an honor like that, but I actually really love the clip that you just played, and thank you for playing that, because I spoke with Laura Trump. And people on the Trump team before I did that. And, I kind of talked to them about what I wanted to say and what I wanted to talk about. And, I went on for 5 or 6 minutes. And of course, I spoke a lot about President Trump and his accomplishments. But I told them, look, it's really important to me that I get to stand up there and address these minority communities because there's so much misinformation out there about what Donald Trump feels about minorities and what Trump supporters think about minorities. And I said, think of how powerful it will be to have a gay man standing there, not being closeted about the truth about who I am, but in fact, actually communicating directly with these communities and saying, look, I used to be afraid too. And I'm not afraid anymore. And you shouldn't be afraid either, because there's nothing that this president or his administration or his followers want to do any harm to these minority communities. And so that to me was the most special part about getting to do that, was getting to have that direct communication with these various minority groups that the media is always fear-mongering to. And in terms of the effect that it's had on my relationships and friends and things like that, well, I mean, I had already lost like 90% of my friends by the time I started WalkAway anyway. So, the remaining percentage of my friends who have stuck around have really been very silent about everything that I've done since I started WalkAway. So I actually got to meet President Trump in December. And I have a great video of that too, and some pictures. And my friends don't really acknowledge anything. The remainder of my friends don't really acknowledge any of this that's happened, unfortunately, which is sad.
But you have so many more new friends now, Brandon. That's
I do.
got to be rewarding for you.
It is. It's incredible.
So let me ask you this, because our show that I do every day here at America's Voice News with Amanda, we have America's Voice Live. We had Terrence K. Williams on this morning, and folks like him, are also taking incoming. Hey, listen, you better fall in line because you're a black. You should be voting Democrat, and you've left the plantation. You're gay, obviously. And again, very much a demographic that is supposed to be politically aligned. Why I opened up the whole issue regarding identity politics. Is America waking up to the fact that you don't have to be aligned with a political party based upon your race or sexuality anymore?
Yeah, I mean, an awakening has absolutely begun. I think it's undeniable. I think it's a matter of how many more people with this day 2020. I mean, I think that's a really huge question, and I think that's really important. But it has started. We know this for a fact because I personally have the video testimonials to prove it. I mean, with WalkAway, one of the things that we, said early on is that we want people to make videos and tell their own stories. And we have incredible video and written testimonials from Black and Hispanic and Jewish and Muslim and LGBT, every type of American, including straight white Americans who we love just as much as anybody else in the WalkAway campaign. So yeah, I mean, I think it's absolutely undeniable that this awakening is happening. And you mentioned Amanda. I want you to make sure to tell her hello from me and that I love her.
I will. We got to have you on our morning show as well to make sure that we have you both on at the same time. So listen, when we're talking about this, I think one of the biggest frustrations that a lot of us have is that, for us to debate the issues, and I want to ask your questions a little bit about more political issues here in a couple of moments with what's going on right now internationally. But when we want to talk about issues, it almost seems like today that if you disagree with somebody on the left, they immediately classify you as a racist or a homophobe or any is there is. And the discussion is over. Let me ask you, for our viewers, what are some of the tools that you've learned with, just basically having this large platform that you have to not allow the conversation to end when somebody throws an epithet at you and to continue the discussion? Because I think you and I both agree it's discussion and conversation and dialogue that will make this country a better place.
Yeah. So I was actually just having this conversation earlier today with somebody, which, so one thing that I say often is that most liberals and most people on the progressive left sort of walk into most situations with the assumption that they are morally superior, and that if they're speaking to somebody on the right, Republican, someone, that person is somehow morally deficient, and that they have the moral high ground, a monopoly on, morality and decency and treating people, marginalized people well. And so what I always say is that I think an effective strategy to have in having a conversation with a liberal is to go into it and try to establish mutual core values, which is to say, let them know that you too care about racism and prejudice, you care about homophobia, that you care about marginalized classes of people, and that is why you believe in the policies that you believe in, and that you have the political views that you have. Because, when I made my transition from liberal to conservative, which is where I am today, I'm actually now a registered Republican, and my values haven't changed. It's my beliefs that have changed, and the ideas that have changed. I'm still against racism. I'm still against sexism. I'm still against homophobia. But what I have learned in my research is that, to believe in things like having a strong border policy and building a wall these are things that are meant to help all people, including the Black community and the Hispanic community, are benefited by having strong border policies. The Second Amendment, being pro right to bear arms, protects women. And it protects, I think, the most vulnerable amongst us, giving people the ability to protect themselves. So I think that if you can, rather than allow yourself to be, enraged perhaps, or allowing somebody to get under your skin and aggravate you and make you angry, try to keep calm, try to take a deep breath, try to stay, on an even emotional keel, and just explain to people calmly, look, I care about all of these same people the same way as you do. I actually am a conservative because it's compassionate, because it's kind, and because conservative values actually help the very people that liberals claim that they want to have.
You remind me of something. I'm going to bring it up here, and I think you tweeted it out recently, and it's from Blair White, and she put up an article, and it's called Top 10 Woke Arguments of the Decade, looking back to the 2010s. I'm just going to go through a couple here, or bring it up on the screen. She starts that not dating trans people is transphobic. She's trans as well, by the way, and I would say definitely more libertarian, right of center, correct? She's a good friend of yours, I understand.
I believe Blair's now a Republican.
She's full Republican now. Okay. She came over to the dark side. So she's got this whole list here. And for example, it's not racist to criticize Islam. Islam isn't a race. Do I need to say more? And I think there's a difference between being Muslim and Islamist, right? And it doesn't seem to be that the media wants to differentiate the two. But going down here, you just talked about this. Number 6 is everyone who disagrees with me is a Nazi. And if we go even further down, number 4, conservative minorities are traitors. So when we talk about these woke arguments, we have now an entire generation that has grown up on social media that truly believe these woke arguments. And so outside of our echo chambers, how are we to reach them and have these discussions, do you think?
The minorities?
Yeah, minorities or just people, white liberals that believe that they're woke, or whoever it may be.
Well, so one thing that WalkAway is doing, I can tell you, is we're traveling around the country and we do these events which are targeting specific minority groups, like the WalkAway Black Americans Town Hall, the WalkAway Hispanic Americans Town Hall, LGBT Town Hall. We're going to be doing our first Jewish Americans Town Hall in February, and an incredible women's event in Nashville, which I haven't actually launched yet, but I don't mind telling you. We have an incredible women's event coming up May 1st with Laura Trump, Judge Janine, Katie Hopkins, Diamond and Silk. It's going to be amazing. But we're actually communicating with these various minority groups across the country and basically having this conversation with fellow minorities who have either walked away or maybe were always conservative or right-leaning, and basically slashing and tearing down some of those media narratives or false societal narratives that have existed a long time, that have been intentionally set up to I think, intimidate and dissuade anybody from changing their mind about anything based off of their minority status. And, we just need to keep having those conversations. And that's why it's amazing when people like Terrence Williams or people like myself or any various person of any various minority community has conversations with people within our own community and say, look, number one, you're not alone. There's a lot of us who disagree with the status quo and the norms of what we're told that we have to believe, or the way that we are being told that we have to be persuaded politically. We're not alone. There's a lot of us, and it's okay to be intellectually diverse, as well as the exterior diversity that's accepted on the left, but the diversity of thought is not. And so I think we just have to keep talking and keep waking people up and keep letting people know they're not alone.
Last question for you. Last few minutes I'd love to spend with you talking about the politics of the day. In the last week, Iran, they went ahead and sponsored a group of folks to try to overtake the U.S. embassy in Iraq that was sponsored by Iran. Soleimani was in turn killed outright, and the world was up in arms. And when I say the world, I'm talking about the leftists in the world who, if this was Obama who took out Soleimani, I don't think for half a minute that people would be upset. But what we've been seeing this past couple of days, Brandon, I want to get your impression. And here's Representative Doug Collins from Georgia, who's one of the new founding fathers. And, we talk about him and Matt Gaetz and Jim Jordan. And these guys are the real up and coming, just Republican leaders now that are taking the fight to the left. Here he is talking about how Democrats are in love with the terrorists and they mourn them more than our Gold Star families. Here's a quick clip.
About constraining his authorities as the commander-in-chief vis-a-vis Iraq. How venal, how vapid can one party become?
Lou, it just is amazing. I mean, if it wasn't so sad and serious with our country to have Nancy Pelosi, I did not think she could become more hypocritical than she was during impeachment. But guess what? Surprise, surprise. Nancy Pelosi does it again, and her Democrats fall right in line. One, they're in love with terrorists. We see that. They mourn Soleimani more than they mourn our Gold Star families, who are the ones who suffered under Soleimani. That's a problem. But also look at this. In 2011, when President Obama went into Libya and stayed longer than, quote, they thought, the war power says he should stay, they said nothing. In fact, she actually excused it and said this is just what presidents do. Let me say, as someone who has a very real constitutional issue with the War Powers Act to start with, I mean, this is just another, again, blatant hypocritical act by Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats because they don't like the president.
Brandon, we had Ilhan Omar. She came out and said that we've got PTSD. She had PTSD watching what just took place, like she was actually a soldier on the field. AOC and Rashid Tlaib, they seem to be standing up for America's enemies today.
Yeah, they do. Perhaps we could tell Ilhan Omar in regards to Trump's attack on the Iranian terrorists that some people did some things over there in Iran. They did them for the betterment of America this time. So perhaps she could celebrate this the way that she discussed 9/11 before, with her reference to that. When this happened the other day, the thing that kind of took me aback most was that CNN spent a good amount of time talking about how now Democrats are unsure if they want to advance articles of impeachment when so much instability right now surrounding the situation in Iran. And I thought to myself, it was such a slam dunk up until this point. Now you're saying that maybe you might not be able to advance the articles of impeachment. It's really, really, really despicable. Honestly, it's very despicable. Everything that they politicize in such a way, and that even I think in moments where even just about any American, I think, should say it's time for us to put our differences aside and come together, because we look, like it or not, this is the president, and like it or not, we have to come together and support the good things that he does and acknowledge the good things that he does. And we also, it's war times are scary times to be in, but we have to support America, and rather than just simply turning on the president every time he does anything or seizing it as an opportunity to sow more seeds of division. And this is what's happening right now, even if it means, mourning the death of a terrorist. Rather than supporting the president who made a military decision, a tough military decision, and the way that it's been politicized, even along with the articles of impeachment, it's all very, very disgusting and it's very dismaying, but not surprising, unfortunately.
Well, as the founder of WalkAway, do you see impeachment and the response to this attack on taking out probably somebody that a lot of people in the know are suggesting actually had more power than bin Laden with his proxies around the Middle East, and we got rid of this guy? Do you see more people walking away from the Democrat Party because of both of these issues?
Well, I don't know if you saw the story that was all over recently about the pretty older guy who had been a lifelong Democrat who actually walked into, I think it was the RNC or like a GOP. I don't know. He walked into the RNC, I think, and ripped up his Democratic voting card and said he wanted to re-register as a Republican. And this is the kind of thing that I think we've been seeing a lot in the last couple of years, are not just people who are willing to walk away from the left.
Oh, hopefully we didn't lose you there, Brandon.
People.
Right at the end. Are you still there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Okay, there you are. Okay, there you are. Yeah, okay. Last minute here with you.
No, essentially what I was just saying is that we're seeing not only people who, are willing to open their mind and consider walking away from the left, but even people who have had lifelong allegiances to the left, and the Democrats who are saying, enough, I've had enough, between impeachment and Brett Kavanaugh and the Russian collusion delusion and the shutting down of the government and just the endless attacks on this president and the lack of ability of Congress to get anything done or to cooperate or do anything in a bipartisan manner. Right. I think people are sick of it.
Great. Brandon Straka. You can find him at Twitter and all over Facebook, WalkAway, and at Brandon Straka. Thank you so much, my friend, for joining us. Greatly appreciate everything you're saying, and congratulations on your continued success. And I'll probably see you February in CPAC, I would assume.
I think you will.
All right. Take care, Brandon. Thanks a lot. And folks, we'll be right back here after the break with Stephen Hayward, senior resident scholar at UC Berkeley. Dave Sussman here at Whiskey Politics. Don't go away. Following us on YouTube, please make sure you click subscribe. That way you don't miss any of our shows, or you can watch them at a later time. And of course, you can watch us all the time and all of our old episodes here at America's Voice News. And listen to our podcast, which you can find on Apple Podcast, Stitcher, Google Play, and of course at the Ricochet Audio Network, where our next guest also has a fantastic podcast, Stephen Hayward over at Powerline. He is also a senior resident scholar at UC Berkeley. Welcome back to the show, Stephen. How are you?
It's great to see you again.
Likewise. So many topics to choose from today, and all I need to do to prepare for an interview with you is check out your most recent articles over at Powerline, which is a fantastic site. I say this every time John Hinderaker comes on. Everybody should have this bookmarked on their home page. It is actually replaced, by the way, the Drudge Report as my home page, as Drudge just kind of went in a different direction lately, hasn't he?
Yeah, I can't figure that out. I don't know what's going on there, but I'm grateful and delighted to hear that we've replaced him for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to get straight into politics, hardcore politics here with, first of all, I want to play a clip. And this is in reference to John Kerry, who is defending right now the Obama administration's what is left of the Iran deal, and he's calling what President Trump suggested in his speech to the world from the White House in reference to them taking out Soleimani, and obviously the attack from Iran into Iraq on the U.S. Air Force bases, calling what Trump said an outright lie that Iran was given $150 billion. Here's a quick clip.
To the president, but the president is so fixated on undoing anything Barack Obama did that he was willing to run the risk of outright war in the effort to fulfill his fantasy about this region and about his presidency. It's the most dangerous thing I've seen since the war I fought in, which was lied about and presented such a crisis to our nation. And I think Americans need to stop and consider the recklessness and impulsiveness of the decision that he made.
I want to take a look at another thing the president said about the Iran nuclear deal. He said, and we'll hear him say it, but he said hostilities increased after the Iran nuclear deal, and he didn't stop there. Let's listen to this.
Iran's hostilities substantially increased after the foolish Iran nuclear deal was signed in 2013, and they were given 100.
I wanted to come out of that because John Kerry goes on to continue to say that President Trump has made the world more dangerous by taking out Soleimani, more dangerous by taking out who many people consider probably a more of a threat than bin Laden ever was. Steve, what is your reaction to all of the things you've seen here from him and the left?
Right. Well, the first thing I thought when I saw John Kerry spouting off he's waving his hands and saying, "Hi, I'm out here. I'm available for the nomination in July if the Democratic campaign goes down the drain like it looks as it might." Second, when he said the clip you played, it seems like Trump just wants to undo anything that Barack Obama did, and I think to myself, well, that sounds pretty good to me. I mean, that seems like a sensible thing for President Trump to do. You know, what did Obama do? I'll do the opposite. Third, I mean, what you really have here is another demonstration that the left learns nothing and forgets nothing. And I'm reminded of something when you think about Iran that Churchill said about the Germans, although he used that old slur. He said, the Hun is either at your throat or at your feet. Now, you know, we had sanctions on Iran for a long time and other pressure that led to a really bad deal. And it wasn't exactly a boot on their throat. But the point is, we took whatever pressure we had off of them. And Trump was absolutely right. They accelerated their mischief making around the world, continued to destabilize the region and attack Americans. And so suddenly the United States, for the first time in 40 years, does something serious, and we're the bad guy. Well, that just shows you how far gone the left is in this country. And Kerry is the best representative for that. I actually hope he starts saying more publicly that he's available to be the candidate again.
Yeah, I think a lot of people seem to be positioning themselves for something. And you see Susan Rice that's coming out, in addition to John Kerry and others that seem to be just grasping at straws to save any semblance of an Obama legacy. And you just went down the list. I mean, you can go to Obamacare and other things as well that he essentially has more or less overturned. But from the standpoint of a global impact, and I know you're a historian, you're a very smart man, you're a professor over at Berkeley. Why didn't any other president, including Republican presidents, Bush too, and I mean, to a certain extent, Reagan did, but why haven't we seen any effort to try to combat the Muellers for 40 years?
You know, that's a great question. I mean, I thought that George W. Bush was going to do something serious about it in his second term, and they didn't do it. And that's still a mystery in my mind. You do mention Reagan, you know, after Hezbollah bombed the Marine barracks in October of 1983 and killed, 241 Marines. Reagan did authorize several serious attempts to fight back against them. He authorized some, bombings and targeted assassinations of Hezbollah leaders, and they all got called off for some reason or another that now I can't remember. And a lot of that, I'm sure, is still classified, in fact. But yeah, we took our eye off the ball, and I think we thought that, as we often think, because we're naive about these things, that surely these crazy countries will have to moderate because of the attractions of trade and modernization, and go on down the list. And I think we underestimate, as we did way back in the beginning of the Iranian Revolution, how serious the theocrats of these countries are about their religious fanaticism. And when they say death to America, I think we should take it seriously that they mean it and respond accordingly.
The economic sanctions that President Trump has put into place is having a detrimental effect on the people, their lives, their economics themselves. Gas prices have gone through the roof for Iranians. And from what I understand, 2/3 of the Iranian population are under the age of 35. You have a split dichotomy in Iran. You have the mullahs and the regime, and then you have this young movement that want peace. They want Western goods and capitalism and consumerism like they see overseas. What do you see as the future in Iran?
Well, I like to say sometimes that the Soviet Union came apart when it lost the will to shoot its own people in large numbers. And that's really the question right now about Iran. There are credible reports that the Quds Force and other security services have killed as many as 1,500 people in the last month or two in some of the protests that there have been in the streets against the regime. So I don't know. I mean, it's hard to predict. I think that there's no bottom to the willingness of the current regime to oppress its own people, to stay in power, and maybe even to sacrifice them in large numbers. And so that raises some really tough questions. Now, I think, last thought on this particular question, we could be even tougher with our economic sanctions. And I wouldn't be surprised to find out someday, years from now, when things are declassified, that the Trump administration has communicated very directly to Iran that if they get out of line again, whether the next thing we do won't be necessarily to kill some of their leaders and their military commanders, but maybe it'll be to destroy some of their oil services infrastructure, like Karg Island, where most of their exports are shipped from. Maybe we will go directly after some of their nuclear research sites and do other things that will destabilize the regime. I'd like to hope that that's what's going on in the background, but it's always hard to tell from afar and just from what we read in the newspapers.
Last question on Iran. We've seen, obviously, with their attacks, not just on the U.S. Embassy in Iraq last week, but multiple attacks with drones. They attacked our ships and other ships. You had the Houthis send in missiles into the Aramco oil facility in Saudi Arabia, essentially impacting 5% of the production of the globe for oil. Let me ask you from the standpoint of the reaction that you've seen. I know we've talked about John Kerry and the Obama administration acolytes, but what about the rest of the reaction that we've seen from the media and American citizens, generally speaking, in reference to us finally putting our foot down? Stephen, is that something that is going to, in essence, shift the balance of the debate, where you've got the left, you've got Ilhan Omar coming out saying she's got PTSD from all of this? And secondly, does it change policy, or, as you refer to, does Trump want to double down?
Well, the one thing about the current circumstance is if Trump wants to double down, he can, more so than any of our previous presidents, for the reason that you put your finger on at the beginning of your question, which is, when both the drone attack on the Saudi oil field a few months ago, and then, the thought that we might be entering World War III 72 hours ago, had a very modest impact on global oil prices. I can remember back, and maybe you can, to the first Gulf War in 1991, when the initial invasion, first of Iraq into Kuwait, and then our counter preparations caused a great spike in global oil prices. And the point is, the political risk premium for the price of oil is now greatly diminished because the United States has got energy independence because of the fracking revolution and oil and natural gas that's spreading around the world. And so oil prices barely budged earlier this week, and they've gone right back down again very quickly. There hasn't been a spike in the futures market for gasoline or oil and so forth. And what it means is that we no longer have to worry and fret about the disruption to our economy and the world's economy from a military disruption in the Gulf. And so, Iran can cause a lot of trouble. They can attack tankers. They can attack Saudi Arabia and other countries there. But the world is new now, and they no longer have the ability to threaten the world economy with their disruption of the oil market. And that's a game changer. I usually don't like to use that phrase, game changer. It's overused a lot. But for that, we should all do what Glenn Reynolds at Instapundit says. We should all go out and hug a fracker.
Absolutely. And another great site I like to go to daily as well. Let's move over to impeachment, Steve. Everybody is kind of, scratching their heads trying to figure out what I think you and I would both agree. Nancy Pelosi, House Speaker of the Democrat Party, she is a strategist. She got impeachment through. She got her 2 articles. She's got the scarlet letter I for impeachment for the rest of Trump's life, at least, once it transfers over to the Senate. But Representative Elise Stefanik from New York, who I think should be on a party ticket in 2024 somehow. I think this woman is phenomenal, maybe next to Nikki Haley. She says that the impeachment dam is breaking, and Pelosi is holding off to protect Adam Schiff. Here's a quick clip.
Congresswoman Stefanik, your take.
My take is that Pelosi has been exposed and the impeachment dam is breaking. We need to continue to keep the pressure up because she has no authority over the Senate. So it is absolutely audacious and outrageous that she has been willing to withhold this after urging the American people and Democrats, forcing them to take this vote on an arbitrary schedule. The real reason why I think she's holding back is she does not want to expose the coordination that we know happened between Adam Schiff and the whistleblower.
What do you make of that, Steve?
I think it's quite possible. I don't really quite know what to make of things. I actually think Pelosi is probably a pretty canny strategist. I mean, she's terrible in front of a microphone, but behind closed doors, I think she's a very shrewd leader. But I also think she was reluctant to go into impeachment at all, but was dragged into it by the party grassroots. There's some opportunism involved. I think she thought it's a no-lose situation because it will hurt Trump even if he's not convicted, which he's not going to be. On the other hand, the polls haven't moved, and now you have the problem. Remember, they rushed to do this by Christmas, and now they're saying, what's the hurry? We can wait till the Senate gets things in order. And if you have a trial in the Senate, guess what? Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, Cory Booker, Amy Klobuchar can't be on the campaign trail in the weeks ahead of Iowa. I don't think she wants that. I think she wants to delay this and hope that maybe they can dig up something else to throw at Trump. So now I think, if there was a way for her to get out of this gracefully, she'd find it. But I think there isn't one. And the last point that Congresswoman Stefanik brings up is, I think the last thing Pelosi and true Democrats want is Adam Schiff being a House prosecution manager in a Senate trial. And so maybe they're hoping the Senate will solve this problem for them by McConnell just holding a trial without the House, which McConnell, I guess, is threatening to do. So I think it's a game of chess, not even chess, really. It's a game of checkers, and it's pretty boring at this point.
We can't separate politics today because it's all just thrown into this big crock pot. Iran impacts impeachment, impeachment maybe impacting Iran, who knows? The Democrats are calling Trump wagging the dog 2020 in a reference to Clinton back in 1998 in a movie, the middling movie, I would say, with Robert De Niro and Dustin Hoffman. I thought it was kind of disappointing considering the stat. But the point being here is that the Democrats seem to want to try to commingle. I think somebody said that they were going to, who was it? Ro Khanna, representative, Democrat House representative, wanted to have another article of impeachment for Trump taking out Soleimani. But impeachment, the independents were going in the wrong direction. The Democrats, if anything about the Democrats, they do something based upon their finger in the wind. They go with the polls to determine their next course of action. Do you think it's as simple as that, as why Nancy Pelosi held off transferring the articles from the House to the Senate?
Well, I don't know if that's necessarily a primary reason, but I think you put your finger on something important, which is one reason that the Democrats want to press, assassinating Soleimani as possibly an impeachment charge is they want to get ahead of the problem that is presented by the contrast between the way Trump dealt with a potential attack on our embassy in Baghdad and the way the Obama administration didn't deal with the attack on the embassy in Benghazi, right? It is kind of interesting to me that for a brief moment there, a week ago, whenever it was, 10 days ago, the left was saying, this could be Trump's Benghazi. And I thought, well, wait a minute. I thought they all said Benghazi was a non-story. They didn't seem to think it through very well. But once they did, I think they realized that the contrast between Trump's firmness and seriousness and the fecklessness of the Obama response to Benghazi meant that was a liability for them with voters. So what do you do with a problem like that? well, you throw up a big fog machine, you say all these crazy things about Trump, threaten to add it as a bill of impeachment, and hope that you can distract the voters from thinking for a moment about the lesson you can take from that contrast.
It's really funny. You're on Twitter, on social media. I think you and I are connected, and you just get a chuckle watching the Twitter left's heads explode over everything. I think you and I would both agree that the news cycle moves so fast that the issues that you and I are talking about right now should be a month's worth of news, and this is going to be off the front page tomorrow because there's going to be another outrage of the day. Do you think people are getting tired, that they're not paying attention as much anymore? They're not outraged as much anymore? What's been the impact from social media, do you think, on our news cycle and our media absorption?
Well, it has sped up the news cycle. The news cycle used to be essentially 24 hours, back in the Reagan years or even into the Clinton years. And it was in the Clinton years when things changed because we got the internet, we got the Drudge Report, then later on comes Twitter and whatnot. And to where it used to be, you worried about what would be on the evening news and what would be in the morning newspapers tomorrow. Nowadays in Washington, you worry about what's going to be on the cable news in 15 minutes or in 5 minutes. And you're worried about what is trending on Twitter 60 seconds from right now. So that certainly changes things a lot, but I don't know that it works in the favor of Trump's opponents or in the Democrats, even though they dominate the major media, of course. And the reason for that is, and maybe you see this in the Clinton years, I did think that one of the things that Clinton benefited from in his impeachment in 1999 was that by the time you got to the Monica Lewinsky scandal, you'd had years of Clinton's opponents, conservative groups, throwing lots of charges at him, some of them with merit, some of them that I think didn't. And people were tired of it. And now what you've had is you throw all these crazy charges at Trump. And I think that even if, the Ukraine phone call, I think it was not perfect, as he says. I think it's way overblown. But I think that a lot of people are saying, it's another version of the old fable of the little boy who cried wolf too many times, right? So I think that the media and liberals, but I repeat myself, as we always do when we mention both of them, aren't really helping themselves by their absolutely Pavlovian response to everything that Trump does and says. By the way, I'm looking forward to Trump sending out a tweet sometime in the next week or two about Princess Harry and Meghan Markle and saying something fun like, gosh, I wish them well, but I sure don't want them coming here to America. And we'll watch everybody absolutely freak out about it. Because, as I'm not the first to say, Trump uses Twitter the way people use a laser pointer with cats. And it's just a marvel.
So I'm going to ask Denver. I sent out a picture to Denver here about 20, 30 minutes ago. I don't know if it's too late or too early to bring it up, but bring it up. I don't know if, Stephen, if you could see this here of Princess Merkel and Prince Harry. And I don't think we have it here. We don't have it? Okay, I'm sorry. So, some meme smith, some brilliant titanium level troller put a picture of Prince Harry standing outside of Buckingham Palace, or maybe it's Windsor Castle, with Yoko Ono.
Oh, that's perfect. Yes. Yeah.
It says everything it needs to say, right?
Yeah.
All right, let's get back to politics real quick here. You have an article at powerline.com, powerlineblog.com. Everybody should bookmark powerlineblog.com. It's a great site. Scott Johnson, John Hinderrocker, who's the other guy?
Paul Mirengoff.
Mirengoff, that's right. Fantastic site. And you posted an article, and I just want to bring it up here, and it is State of the Democrat Race Today, or State of the Dem Race Today. And I do believe we have an image of it, and it's coming up here. Yep. And you say, as of this moment, if I had to place a wager, I believe Bernie Sanders is going to be the Democrat nominee, but I wouldn't necessarily bet much. The race is just too volatile. And you put up pictures here of the different candidates. You're saying that Bernie, Biden, and Buttigieg virtually tied in Iowa and New Hampshire. It looks like Warren is starting to falter a little bit here. But what is your perspective of what the Democrats are presenting to America for 2020 right now?
Well, I think you have two strains of the storyline. One is that, as everyone knows, the energy in the Democratic Party is on the left, the progressive wing of the party. But that's not necessarily all Democrats or even a majority of Democrats. I think that the media and their cheerleaders in Hollywood and academia and elsewhere get carried away with thinking that the progressives are the whole of the party. And so on the one hand, about half of the Democratic electorate says they're still undecided. And it's getting kind of late now. I mean, usually people may change their mind as a campaign goes on, but usually they have a favorite in the field that's presented to them. And so you have a lot of Democratic voters who are not very enthusiastic about this field. Joe Biden is maybe the most attractive by reputation and history, but gosh, is he looking shaky. He has a senior moment about every 30 seconds, as we can all see. And meanwhile, Bernie has got that fervent grassroots base. He raised a ton of money this last quarter, most of it in small amounts, which means a lot of those people who gave him money can give him more money. I mean, if he does well in these early primaries, watch for him to raise $50 million really fast. And, that doesn't necessarily win an election, especially, as I noted later on in that same post, that while Bernie and the other leading office-holding candidates like Elizabeth Warren have spent, between $10 and $15 million on advertising so far, Michael Bloomberg has already spent close to $150 million on TV ads. There are lots of Bloomberg ads airing out here in California, which is an expensive media market, 2 months ahead of the primary. Tom Steyer has also spent, I think, over $100 million already. And I'm just sitting back and enjoying the spectacle of two billionaires outspending the rest of the field combined in a party that makes billionaire hating a core principle at the moment. And that's why I'm buying lots of popcorn right now.
Yeah, it's definitely popcorn time. And in that same article, I don't know, Denver, if you can scroll down and put it up on the screen here, but you put up a tweet from David Wright at CNN, and it's the total ad spend by 2020 candidates through this week. And here it is. As you just mentioned, Bloomberg is over $153 million. Steyer, $116 million. Sanders, $11 million. And then Buttigieg, $11 million, Yang, $7 million, and it goes down to Gabbard at $1.1 million. So between the two top guys, Bloomberg and Steyer, the billionaires in the race, they have spent over $266 million. And we're in January. I mean, this is incredible to me. What does this say about the Democrat Party that is allowing rich white men to come in and essentially take over?
You could say it says nothing good about it, or you can say it testifies to the weakness of the field. I do suspect that, remember that Bloomberg was a reasonably effective, three-term mayor of New York City, which is not nothing. That's a much better record to run on than Mayor Pete. And certainly Tom Steyer's never held public office at all. And I'll bet behind the scenes there are a lot of, establishment Democrats, the Beltway, Wall Street type of Democrats who are hoping that Bloomberg can hang on. If it's a fragmented field coming out of the first 4 or 5 primary states, Nevada is very different from South Carolina, which is different from Iowa and New Hampshire. Then all of a sudden, Bloomberg's billions may actually make a difference in the California primary. And the other Super Tuesday states, and you never know. While John Kerry and Hillary Clinton are all sitting in the background, hoping that if there was actually a broker convention, which we haven't had in 60-some years, but this year there's some probability it could happen. It might be Bloomberg is the guy that they say that they want to turn to. It wouldn't surprise me at this stage. Nothing surprises me anymore.
Yeah, I don't think we can be surprised by anything. And you're absolutely correct. A lot of the political prognosticators are suggesting that is Bloomberg's plan. He's not even campaigning in Iowa or New Hampshire or South Carolina. He's going straight to Super Tuesday to rack up enough delegates. And listen, if you're a Joe Biden or a Yang or a Buttigieg, if you don't win Iowa, you're in trouble. But if you can fund yourself, the whole thing about winning Iowa and New Hampshire is to get a springboard, look like you got momentum, and that way you get more campaign cash. Bloomberg and Steyer look like they're going to be in this thing all the way through, and it's about getting delegates. So, if you're looking at that, Steve, what does a broker convention look like in August?
Oh, I have no idea because, I was not even born the last time we had one, which is the early 1950s, really. And I have joked for a long time that we ought to go back to the old smoke-filled rooms of picking nominees. And these days, the smoke would be a whole lot more fun since we're legalizing weed everywhere, right? I don't think anyone knows how that would work because, in the old days, you had real party bosses and people with real control over delegates. And now I don't know quite how that works. It might end up being a free-for-all with multiple ballots. And, we need to ask some real old-timer who's, somebody in their 80s who was at one of those conventions in 48 and 52, what it was like and how it was done, because I have no idea how you'd go about it today.
Yeah. Stephen, last question for you going into our last minute here. And I greatly appreciate you taking the time as always. You have been writing for quite some time. Again, you're a senior resident scholar at UC Berkeley. You've seen trends. You've seen cycles in politics and the economy and everything. Have you ever seen anything like what we are seeing right now in the age of Donald Trump? And how does that impact you on a daily basis with trying to pick and choose what to write about?
Oh, God. Well, my problem on any given day is there are 15 things worth writing about, and I have time maybe for one or two at best. Yeah, things are crazy. That's not an original insight. Things do remind me a little bit of 1972. I was a teenager then, but I was paying attention. And what you saw then was a Democratic Party and the new left, as it was called then. Now it's the old left. But they were absolutely furious at the existence of Richard Nixon. And, of course, angry about the Vietnam War. The Democratic Party lost control. In fact, even George McGovern, who is really kind of a sweet man in the ordinary sense, even he admitted he lost control of his own campaign. Well, now the Democratic Party is not just losing control of its own campaign, but they're losing control of the center of the party, which, as you say, is being pulled to the left by, Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren in particular. But all the other candidates who decided they had to go along with all the progressive woke nonsense. I mean, we saw that from Cory Booker, who I met once and is, a sensible person in a lot of ways, but decided he had to be Mr. Super Woke, and it's not him. He's not authentic about it, right? But in any case, this is reminding me a bit of 1972. I don't think Trump could win a 49-state landslide. I think the demographics of the country have changed and the left-leaning voting blocks are bigger and so forth. But I think you could easily see Trump winning a fairly convincing reelection. And I think that will lead to a crisis in the Democratic Party that will be much bigger than the problem they faced in the 1980s, when after 3 successive Republican landslides, they finally said, we better be a little more modern and think about this a bit. And if Trump
Stephen Hayward, hate to cut you off here, but we're coming to the end of our show here. But we got to have you back on again real soon. Everybody, find Stephen Hayward at Powerline on Twitter, on Facebook, and would love to have you back on to discuss more. And thank you for following us, folks. You can find me daily at America's Voice Live here at America's Voice News, and we'll be back again next week at Whiskey Politics. Cheers.